Welcome to the Market Mystics Podcast. I'm Joshua.
I'm Kim. Let's dive in.
What's your favorite thing about being uniquely you?
Probably that nobody could replicate it. I just value uniqueness. What about you?
Yeah, that's a great thing. Like no one could replicate it. I think what I enjoy is figuring out what that means in my life. Like what does it mean to be uniquely me?
Yeah.
There's some things that are just that you learn from your environment, like your whole childhood you are modeling what you're seeing. So there's some things that are learned, there's patterns that are just given to you. But I think as an adult there is never a moment that you don't have the opportunity to decide to create a new pattern.
That's true.
Sometimes it's easier said than done, but you do have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything about you is changeable given the time, like whatever, like belief system, like you can make it happen.
That's true. I like that.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this because we were talking a little bit about people blindly following, and the like I had in my notes this idea of talking about like um uh conformity versus identity. And there's there can be beauty in both, because like there's a beauty in belonging. Like I think it is one of the deepest desires of human nature to want to belong to something. I think that's why we love sports. I think that's why when people talk about their favorite sports teams, they refer to them as like, we didn't play so well this weekend, when they were sitting on their couch watching them and had nothing to do with the outcome. But you identify as like, that's my team, that's my tribe. People get like that with sometimes their family is their tribe, and they're fierce about their family. And sometimes it's a friend group or a church group or, whatever. There's many things it could be. But I think there's like beauty in being part of something bigger than yourself. But I also think even within that, um, it's just as important to maintain you and to continue growing you. So, who are you in part of like your sports team? Who are you inside your church? Like, and I think a lot of times that can just be like a secondary thought. Like, well, this is who I am because this is who everyone else is. Um, but I do think that there's a real beauty in being fully part of something and still being fully you. Like, I think that's the optimal place to be.
I completely agree. One of the things we were talking about before this is I was mentioning the Israelites in the wilderness. And so they're taken out of slavery, they're brought into the wilderness, they are provided for every single day by God. He says he'll do it, he does it. Moses goes away for a few days and they build a golden calf. Like they have to build another idol.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good example of that. Like, here are these people who are given identity, like, you are mine. Like, I'm really setting you apart for something else. And the moment that, I don't even know how it happened, maybe one started faltering and came up with a good idea and then everybody just followed suit or whatever. But I think like this need, even in a big group, to look to somebody else um, to be the thing is where the detriment lies.
Yeah.
Because I also think community is so important. And I think it's just like you said, so important to feel that belonging within a group of people, whether it is the whole group of people, like all of existence, or in a very micro group, maybe all of it. Um, but I also think we really kind of stifle and starve those around us when we don't, I guess, live out that unique identity that we've been given as well. I don't actually think that we would have been given an identity from the Lord. I don't think He would make us uniquely unless others needed it, unless it was important
Mm,
for the kingdom, unless there was a purpose in it. And so it tends to be for me when I see that uniqueness kind of get swallowed up by either there's a big personality and there's kind of no room for any other kind of uniqueness, or when someone just doesn't recognize what they carry themselves and they honor sometimes even to the point of idolizing people around them. And so then, like, sometimes we'll try to mimic or look like the other person. I think, what a shame, because I know that God has purpose in that. And truly, like when I meet somebody, I don't want them to look like me and I don't want them to look like anybody else. Like I just want to meet who is this person.
yeah.
Um, and sometimes that's hard to do. And I find that, especially in the church, even within like, oh, the awakened, or oh, the mystics, or oh, the people who are moving on, it still happens. And there's still like this looking to someone else to be the something that shines,
Yeah.
um, as opposed to like really digging in and being exactly who they're supposed to be. But I think it really is important, especially in community. Like it's not to be able to stand on your own and be the lone, I don't know, I'm sure there's some saying the one person on the hill. Like it's not that.
Right.
It's to add to the whole, right?
Yeah. I think anytime you are not being who you are supposed to be, you're possibly also keeping someone else from stepping into who they're supposed to be. Especially in a situation like a community where there's like a roles to fill.
Mm.
Like I think that you can have the time, like there can be a possibility where you are, um, where you're doing something that is someone else's identity and you're doing it because you saw a gap, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because that gap probably needed to be filled. Um, but also, like, you're not allowing the person who is supposed to step in and do it to be there. And that can be a tricky thing to figure out. Like, because in the initial stages, when there's not a lot of other people, it might be super necessary for someone to step in and fill that gap. But knowing when to say, hey, like, this isn't actually what I'm supposed to be doing. Um, and so I need to step away from it so that someone else can. Like that can be a really tricky thing to figure out. And I don't know how you figure that out necessarily. Um, but it is important.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's one of I won't say one of the most difficult things to do, but it is a really difficult thing to do. especially if you tend to be a helper.
Mm,
Like anyone who likes to help and make sure things are going well or things are being done right. Any of those kinds of personalities, it's really hard to walk away when there's a gap and you are capable, but it is not for you.
yeah.
Um, about a year ago, I was in a situation that was like brought me right up against something like this. There's a new organization being filled. I am working with these people. I see their vision. I understand it. They know that I have these skills and this capacity. So they asked me to be in this role, and I say, okay, I'll pray about it, which I did. And it was just very clear to me, yes, you can do it. Is this for you? No, it's not. There is someone else who will fit that role better and who it really is for, and it will bring them life. Um, and so I told the people in leadership that. And I will tell you, not only was it hard to say and figure out, but it was really hard for them to receive because it felt like rejection.
Sure.
And it absolutely was not rejection. Like, I did everything I could. I'm like, I am for you. Like, I want to see you succeed. All of these things. I just know that if I fill this spot, the person who's supposed to be there won't be able to. And so I just know I can't even step in at this point. Um, but that's not the easiest, like you said, it's not the easiest place to get to. Um, and you do actually have to put aside do you ever get like a hero complex?
I think sometimes I have thoughts of that. Yes.
Yeah, like, well, here's this problem and I could solve it.
I could
Look
solve
at,
it.
I could help a lot of people with this. But what if it's not for you to do?
Yeah.
And laying that down is hard.
Yeah. It's really hard to it's really hard to admit that you weren't supposed to be in that spot when it's something you could do and something that's needed. But I think that that has to come out of a place of like really knowing who you are. Because like we've talked about this before, but who you are isn't just what you can do. Um, but that is often how we perceive it, or how we have been accustomed to explaining it. So having your
Right.
identity sorted, and then like that's what allows you to be able to that's what allows you to be able to turn it down and know that actually was not for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not that I can do, so I will be. It is I am, so I can do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like the things that you're skilled at, the things that you're capable of doing should be pouring from your identity, not building your identity from the things you can do. Right. Like I could stand
Yeah.
on my head, but do I then say, but I'm a headstander? That's who I am. You know, well, just because I can do it doesn't mean that that's who I am.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that that's a very good point. Like, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but there's a big difference from doing to be and being to do. It's a big thing that both of us spent a lot of time learning, and probably will for a long time continue to spend a lot of time learning.
Yeah, I don't know. At this point, I'm not so sure that there's ever an end to it.
The learning.
The learning about who
Yeah.
you are. I don't know that there's
Yeah.
an end to what he has for you because I think if you reach what you think is the extent, he'll just open another door and open it wider and be like, oh, but this too.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, but how far are you willing to explore with it? How deep are you willing to dive in? are you satisfied with just knowing one or two things about you and then you'll run the rest of your life with that? Or do you want to know one or two things now, chew on it for a while, let it develop, and then learn a few more things, and then chew on it for a while and learn a few more things?
Yeah.
Or do you want to learn one thing today and one thing 5 minutes from now, and then two more things 10 minutes from then? Like, how fast do you want this to go? I don't think there's actually a limit. I'll be honest, I don't.
Yeah. I think that to some extent um there is a grace in it being a slow journey.
I
uh,
think so too. Mine has been a slow journey. I will say
yeah.
that. And sometimes, if there's too much at once, it can be really overwhelming.
Yeah. I mean, overwhelming and possibly destructive. Like there's just so much, there's only so much you can handle, that you can digest, that you can process at once.
That is
And so
true.
I do think that part of life is just walking with the Father, like walking with Him. It's that lifelong invitation to an adventure that I think it was what makes this so beautiful. Is it's just, hey, I want to do this with you forever. And as you grow up, you're going to learn more about who you are and who I am and who we are together. And that's just like, it's just that invitation to a constant adventure that I think makes God so fun, like,
Mhm.
or appealing, or like
Yeah,
you can go as slow, you can go faster, but it's just constantly an invitation to continually be in a state of change.
I love that. I'm built for change. This is something I know about myself.
Yeah.
I'm built for change. So those things sound exciting to me. Some people change is hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes change is hard when uh when that has become your identity. Like it's easier to have change. Um, well, okay. I just heard someone, I was listening to a podcast yesterday about um, do you view yourself as the driver and your body as the car? Or do you view yourself as both the driver and the car? Or do you view yourself as a passenger? And
Huh.
they were talking about like how you interact with your body. It was like a fitness type podcast. And they were like, the human experience is a really unique one because it's one of the only times where we often view ourselves as both the driver um, and the car. So if you were to just hop into your physical car and you're like, oh, the like steering feels like funky, you just be like, okay, well, I clearly need to go to a mechanic, find out what's not functioning optimally, and have that worked on.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are also the car, you tend to take a mindset of, I must be broken. Um, and I think that part of like this invitation with God is like, the less you make it I'm good or I'm bad or I'm broken or I'm whole. And it's just, this is part of the experience. This is part of the journey. And if something isn't working the way it should be, I probably have the capacity to change it. Like I probably have the ability to do something different. Um, Now there's some things that are largely out of your control, but even in things that are out of your control, you always have your mind set about that you can change what that means. Um, and I just, yeah, I think that that analogy of like really looking at, how do I view my human experience? Do I view it that I have any authority? Do I just view it as I'm a passenger and I don't have any control over where I'm going or what's happening with the car? Um, or any of the other options. Like I think that that is like a um that was a cool thought experiment for me, uh because it helps me, however I answer that question probably impacts how I view my relationship with God. And so if I view myself as the passenger, well, who's in control? Well, if he's the one who's in control, then like I think your tendency would be to put blame or credit directly on him for absolutely everything that happens, which is not also not necessarily good, bad. Like, I'm not trying to make a judgment on that. But I also think oftentimes with him, there's an invitation for you to take responsibility and to partner with him in creating your life.
I think so too. I tend to, and this is only from one person's experience, that's mine. Like, I tend to think he's gracious in that though too. Like in allowing you to take responsibility and start to take the wheel.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you might be on a tricycle first, and then you might have training wheels, and then he might start taking off the training wheels, and then he might have you riding in the car, and then he might let you hold the wheel while he drives the rest. And,
Yeah.
like, I think it's not always an all or nothing thing with him. Um, but the more you seek the experience with him, the more he will show you and lead you and help you mature in some of these things, so that, yeah, you can be driving the vehicle by yourself, knowing him well enough to know what when you should turn and when you should brake and when you should change your windshield wiper fluid, like, you know.
Yeah. 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 I just think he wants to do everything with you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be on your own. You don't have to, um, yeah, you don't have to wonder like if he's there. I think he wants to do it with you. And I think one of the ways he does that with you is by introducing you to community who is physically with you and supporting you and celebrating you, but celebrating who you are uniquely. Like, how do you maintain um, like your identity in community? I think that's like my thought process in this. And I have some ideas because I feel like I've had some experience working through that, but
Mm-hmm.
also like I don't know that it's ever something I will be like, oh, I've achieved that. Like I'm there. I don't know that I'll ever be at that spot.
Same. I think ideally, to me, with that question, although you asked and I think you meant it to be rhetorical, but I'm just going to skip over those nuances and I'm going to go right to answering. Um, how do you maintain your uniqueness in a community? I think it is first being willing to not have to find yourself in that community. Like, sometimes I think we go into communities and we expect to find people who are exactly like us. And then when they fall short of being just like us, we get disappointed and we say, oh, well, this obviously wasn't for me.
Right.
Um, and I think if you just shifted perspective a little bit, and if you went into a community saying, I know I carry a piece of God in me, I want to go find a piece of Him in everybody else, I
Mm,
think you might really find way more connection than if you go looking for people who are like you. Does that make sense? I think that's how
yes.
you can maintain uniqueness in a community, is when people really start looking for him and connecting over those commonalities instead of looking for their individual selves to be reflected back to them, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, it's just part of this journey. It's part of what we get to do. And I encourage everyone to spend a little bit of time thinking about who you are, how you view yourself, how you view your role within community, within your family, um, and like ask, is that really, am I filling too many roles? Or is that who I am? Like maybe
Mhm.
that's exactly who you are. Uh, and then, like, I'm not even saying you need to make massive changes in your life. Sometimes just the understanding that you are filling a role that isn't who you are can be enough of a mental shift to make a big difference within that space.
For sure. Just immediately it makes me think of like um filling a role is like being an NPC. Have you
Yeah.
seen the movie Free Guy?
Yeah.
Like you should, like instead of just filling a space and being a non what is it, non-player character, right?
Mm-hmm.
NPC. Like maybe step out of that, stop filling that gap and start being who you're supposed to be and then just be the main character.
Yeah. Be the main character in your own life.
Let's do that.
I like it. I like it. Good stuff. Well, thank you guys for today. And I hope, if anything, this episode makes you think. Like that's always my goal, is to keep thinking, keep journeying. And I hope that's how you guys feel with it.
Agreed. See you guys next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Market Mystics. If you are hungry for more, don't miss out on our exclusive bonus content available only to YouTube members. Demystify the world of cryptocurrency in the cryptosphere and explore everything from outrageous conspiracies to curious current events and out there spiritual musings. Nothing is off limits in Let's Get Weird. Become a channel member on YouTube to unlock these extra episodes. See you in the bonus episodes.